The I-80 across Wyoming in winter isn't a road, it's a test of faith. Your faith is in your rig, in the tread of your tires, and in the stubborn, stupid belief that you can outsmart the weather. My load was mundane, consumer goods from Chicago, destined for Salt Lake City, and my timeline was tight. The sky had been a flat, threatening gray since Cheyenne, and the chatter on the CB was a steady stream of warnings about a real bastard of a system moving in from the north. I'd been driving for 8 hours, the diesel heater humming its steady tune, the smell of stale coffee and worn leather filling the cab. The landscape was hypnotic in its bleakness. Endless stretches of snow-covered scrub, broken only by the occasional fence post or lonely billboard advertising a gas station 50 miles ahead. This is the part of the job they don't show in movies, the soul-crushing monotony. The way your eyes start playing tricks on you, seeing shapes in the snowdrifts. I was fighting the fatigue, my eyelids feeling like sandpaper, when I first saw them. A speck of color in the vast, white and gray canvas of the shoulder. I squinted, my hands tightening on the wheel. As I got closer, the specks resolved into people. A man, a woman, and a smaller figure, a child, standing beside a dust-covered sedan with its hood up. They were waving, their movements frantic, desperate. A knot tightened in my stomach. You see all sorts out here. Broke college kids, drifters, folks whose luck had just run out. But a family, in this, it was a death sentence. The rulebook, the unwritten law of the road, screamed at me to stop. No one leaves a kid out in a Wyoming winter. No one. I downshifted, the Jake brake letting out a low growl as I began to slow the 18-wheeler. The air brakes hissed, a familiar sound that usually meant a rest stop or a way station. This time, it felt different. The cab grew quieter, the only sound the ticking of the cooling engine and the whine of the wind outside. I pulled the rig onto the wide shoulder about 100 yards ahead of them, my tires crunching on the packed snow and ice. I flipped on my hazards, the amber lights casting a rhythmic, pulsing glow on the swirling snow. In my side mirrors, I watched them. They had stopped waving. They just stood there, perfectly still, beside their dead car. Grabbing my heavy winter coat and a spare set of gloves from the passenger seat, I cracked the door open. The cold hit me like a physical blow, stealing my breath. It was the kind of cold that hurts, that seeps into your bones in seconds. I jumped down from the cab, my boots sinking into the snow, and turned to face them. "Hey," I shouted, my voice muffled by the vast, empty landscape. "You folks all right?" They didn't move. They didn't shout back. They just stood there, silent and still as statues. A prickle of unease, sharp and cold, traced its way down my spine. This wasn't right. No one is that calm when they're freezing to death. I started walking towards them, my footsteps the only sound in the oppressive silence. The wind had died down for a moment, as if the world itself was holding its breath. The family came into sharper focus. The man was wearing a simple canvas jacket, utterly inadequate for the weather. The woman had a scarf, but it was draped loosely around her neck. The child, a little girl of maybe 6 or 7, was clutching a small, threadbare teddy bear. "Your car break down," I called out, "closer now." My breath plumed in front of my face, a thick, white cloud. Theirs did not. I stopped walking, my brain sluggishly trying to process that fact. It was 20 degrees below zero. Everyone has breath. That's when I noticed the details. The way the snow had dusted their shoulders and heads and hadn't melted. The way the weak afternoon light glinted off a fine, crystalline layer of frost that covered their faces and clothes. It wasn't just snow, it was rime ice, the kind that forms when supercooled water droplets freeze on contact. I took another step, now close enough to see their eyes. The man's were fixed on a point somewhere down the road, wide and unblinking. The woman's gaze was lowered, as if looking at the ground near my feet. The little girl was looking right at me. Her eyes were the color of a frozen lake, a pale, milky blue, and they were utterly, terrifyingly empty. There was no life in them, no plea, no fear, nothing. My heart was hammering against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat of primal fear. This was wrong. This was so profoundly wrong. They weren't shivering. They weren't moving a muscle. They were posed, like mannequins. I reached a hand out, slowly, towards the man's arm. I don't know what I was thinking. To shake him, to confirm he was real. My gloved fingers were an inch from his sleeve when I saw it. A small, dark plaque at their feet, half buried in a snowdrift. I hadn't noticed it from the road. I bent down, brushing the snow away with a frantic swipe of my hand. The words, etched into cold, black metal, sent a jolt of pure ice through my veins, in memory of the Pearson family. Frozen, December 16, 1998. A truck passed by. It did not stop. I stumbled backward, my boots slipping on the ice. I fell hard on my backside, but I barely felt the impact. My eyes were locked on the family, on the monument. They weren't real. They were a warning, a ghost story made solid. I scrambled to my feet, panic overriding all other thought. I ran for my truck, my lungs burning with the cold, frigid air. I hauled myself into the cab, slamming the door shut and locking it with a trembling hand. I fumbled with the keys, my vision blurring. I couldn't get the image of their eyes out of my head, especially the little girls, those empty, frozen eyes. I started the engine, the roar of the diesel a comforting, real sound. I didn't look in the mirrors. I didn't check my blind spot. I shoved the gear shift into drive and pulled back onto the interstate, my foot heavy on the accelerator, desperate to put miles between me and that thing on the shoulder. For the first hour, I drove in a blind panic. My hands were clenched so tight on the wheel my knuckles were white. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them, the frost on the man's eyelashes, the woman's silent despair, the doll in the little girl's arms. I tried to rationalize it, a macabre public art installation, a hyper-realistic safety campaign by the State Highway Patrol, but that plaque, it was weathered, old. It looked like it had been there for years, and the location was so remote. Who would maintain it? Who would even see it? The weather, which had been holding, began to deteriorate. The gray sky deepened to a bruised purple, and the first fat, heavy snowflakes started to fall. They weren't the gentle, swirling kind. They were a relentless, horizontal assault, driven by a wind that was beginning to howl around the cab of my truck. The CB crackled to life, pulling me from my spiraling thoughts. Double quotes ... eastbound. You got a county plow about 5 miles ahead of you, but he's calling it in. This is gonna be a whiteout, folks. Batten down the hatches. It was a voice I recognized, an old-timer Handle, Wyoming Willie. I keyed the mic, my voice shaky. Copy that, Willie. This is southbound rig, just past mile marker 212. You know anything about a statue on the shoulder back there, a family? There was a long pause, filled with static. When Willie came back on, his voice had lost its folksy charm. It was low and serious. You saw him, huh? Yeah, I saw him. What the hell is that? I asked, desperation creeping into my voice. Another pause. That's the Pearson family, driver. They're a story, an old one. You just keep your eyes on the road and your mind on your driving. Don't think about them too much. Don't think about them. They looked real, Willie. They had ice on them. Some say they are, Willie said, his voice grim. Some say when the snow gets bad enough, they come back. To see who stops. Now, I gotta clear this channel for weather. You find a place to hole up, son. This ain't a night to be on the road. The CB went silent. He was gone. To see who stops. The words echoed in my head. The plaque. A truck passed by. It did not stop. They weren't just a memory. They were a test. And I had stopped. I had gotten out. What did that mean? Was I safe? Or was I now a part of their story? The snow was coming down in sheets now, a solid wall of white. My wipers were on their highest setting, struggling to clear the windshield. The world outside had shrunk to the 10 feet of asphalt illuminated by my headlights. I was alone in a roaring, white silence. The blizzard swallowed the world. It was a full-fledged whiteout. The wind screamed like a banshee, rocking the massive truck on its suspension. I was crawling along at 20 miles per hour, my high beams reflecting off the swirling snow and blinding me. I was looking for an exit, a rest stop, anything. But the signs were invisible in the gloom. My mind kept circling back to the Pearsons. Had they been real people, once? Had they stood on that very shoulder, their hopes rising with the sound of every approaching engine, only to have them dashed as taillights faded into the storm? The sheer, slow agony of it, freezing to death, watching your child freeze, because one person, someone in a warm, safe cab just like mine, couldn't be bothered to stop. I understood the guilt of the road. We've all passed a stranded motorist on a bad day, telling ourselves they probably have a phone, that help is on the way. It's a lie we tell ourselves to preserve our schedule, our sanity. But for that one driver back in '98, that lie had lethal consequences. His single, selfish decision had created an echo, a ripple in reality that was now haunting this stretch of highway forever. A shape loomed in the whiteness ahead. My heart leapt into my throat. Was it a sign, a shelter? As I drew closer, my blood ran cold. It wasn't a sign. It was a car. A dust-covered sedan with its hood up, parked on the shoulder. And standing beside it, 3 figures, a man, a woman, a child. They were closer to the road this time, their postures identical. The man's arm was raised, not in a frantic wave, but in a stiff, formal gesture of hail. Their faces were turned towards me, pale ovals in the storm, their features obscured by the blowing snow and the growing darkness. I let out a strangled sound, a mix of a gasp and a sob. It was impossible. I had been driving for over an hour. I was miles away. There was no way I could have looked back. No way they could be here, but they were. My foot instinctively lifted from the accelerator. The unwritten law screamed in my head, stop, help them. But another, deeper, more terrified instinct screamed louder, no, they are not what they seem. I wrenched my eyes away from them and stared straight ahead, focusing on the broken white line of the road, a line that was quickly disappearing under the drifting snow. I pressed the accelerator down. I was not going to stop. I couldn't. As I roared past them, the truck buffeted by the wind, I couldn't help but glance into my side mirror. Through the blizzard, I saw them, all 3 of them. Their heads had turned, in perfect, unnatural unison, to watch me go. Their empty eyes following my taillights into the storm. The next 30 minutes were a special kind of hell. The storm was winning. The road was gone, completely obliterated. I was driving on pure instinct, trying to keep the rig between what I guessed were the ditches. The only thing keeping me from panic was the raw, electric terror of what I had just seen. Then my engine sputtered. It was a small hiccup at first, a momentary loss of power. Then it did it again, more violently this time. A warning light flickered on my dashboard, the fuel filter indicator. No, not now. The diesel in my tanks was gelling in the extreme cold, clogging the filter. If it got completely blocked, the engine would starve and die, leaving me stranded in the middle of this frozen nowhere. I had to stop. I had to get out and switch to my auxiliary fuel filter, a simple 5-minute job that now felt like a death sentence. I peered into the white void, looking for any semblance of a pull-off. I saw a faint, dark space ahead, a wide turnout, probably used by loggers in the summer. Gripping the wheel, I guided the shuddering truck off the road and into the turnout, coming to a stop. The engine coughed ominously. I had maybe minutes before it stalled completely. This was it. I had to go out there. I pulled on my heavy coat, wrapped a scarf around my face, and grabbed my toolbox and the spare filter. Taking a deep breath, I pushed the door open and jumped down into the snow. The wind was brutal, knocking the breath from my lungs. The cold was so intense it felt like needles on my exposed skin. I scrambled to the side of the rig, my head down against the stinging snow. I popped the latch on the side panel and got to work, my numb fingers fumbling with the wrench. The world had shrunk to the metal side of my truck and the howling whiteness. Every shadow seemed to move, every gust of wind sounded like a whisper. I had just spun the old filter off and was reaching for the new one when I heard it. A sound that wasn't the wind, a soft, crunching footstep in the snow behind me. I froze, my heart stopping in my chest. Very slowly, I turned my head. There, at the edge of the light cast by my truck's running lights, stood the little girl. She was alone. The frozen teddy bear was still clutched in her stiff arms. Her pale, empty eyes were fixed on me. A fine layer of fresh snow was already collecting on her hair and shoulders. She took a small, stiff step forward. The ice on her jacket crackled with the movement. I dropped the wrench. It landed in the snow with a dull thud. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I was trapped between the wheel well and this thing. She lifted her arm, the movement jerky, unnatural. She wasn't pointing at me. She was pointing past me, back towards the road. I followed her gaze. Through the swirling snow, I saw the other 2 figures, the man and the woman. They were standing at the edge of the turnout, watching, waiting. This was it. This was how it ended. Not in a crash, not in a mechanical failure, but frozen solid, found days later beside my rig, another cautionary tale for the CB radio. The Pearsons hadn't wanted help. They wanted company, but they didn't move. They just stood there, the 3 of them, forming a silent, frozen triangle around me and my dying truck. The little girl's outstretched arm remained raised, pointing. My brain, frozen with fear, suddenly clicked. Her pointing. It wasn't an accusation, it was a direction. She was pointing down the road, ahead. The engine gave one last, shuddering cough and died. The lights on the side of my truck flickered and went out, plunging us into near darkness, lit only by my dying headlights. The silence, without the engine's rumble, was absolute and terrifying. The little girl lowered her arm, her head tilted slightly. And in the profound emptiness of her eyes, I saw something new. Not malice, not anger, it was a purpose. The man, the father, took a step forward. He didn't walk through the deep snow. He seemed to glide over it, leaving no footprints. He stopped a few feet from me. His frost-covered face was calm. He slowly raised his own arm and pointed in the same direction as his daughter, down the road, ahead. And then I understood. They weren't haunting the trucks that passed them by. They were haunting this stretch of road, this specific stretch where they had died. They were a permanent, frozen lighthouse in a sea of snow. A warning to stop, but also a warning to keep going. To get out of the storm. They were pointing me to safety. My truck was dead. I was stranded. But they were telling me I was close. To what? A town, a shelter? The woman, the mother, now stepped forward. She stood beside her husband and daughter. For a moment, the three of them were together, a united front against the storm. Then, they began to fade. It wasn't that they walked away. The blizzard itself seemed to absorb them, their figures becoming translucent, then mere outlines in the snow, and then, nothing. I was alone again, the wind howled, but the paralyzing fear was gone, replaced by a desperate, clear-headed resolve. I abandoned the fuel filter. I grabbed my go bag from the cab, the one with the survival blanket, water, and energy bars. I took one last look at my rig, my home on wheels, now a frozen metal tomb. Then, I started walking. I walked in the direction they had pointed. Head down, leaning into the wind, following a path I could not see, guided by the ghosts of a family that froze to death because someone like me didn't stop. I don't know how long I walked. It could have been 10 minutes, it could have been an hour. Time lost all meaning in that white hell. My face was numb, my legs were leaden. I was on the verge of collapse, of just lying down in the snow and letting the cold take me, when I saw a faint, orange glow in the distance. I pushed forward, my last reserves of strength fueled by pure hope. The glow resolved into the lights of a small, roadside motel, a no vacancy sign flickering, but the office light was on. It was a mile off the interstate, a place I would have never found, never even known existed, if not for them. I stumbled into the office, my body shaking uncontrollably. The clerk, an elderly man, looked up in shock. He got me a blanket, a hot coffee, and called for help. I was the only one who had made it there that night. The next day, the storm cleared. A tow truck retrieved my rig. The diesel had gelled, but the engine was fine. Once it was thawed and the filter changed, it ran like a dream. I never told the tow truck driver what happened. I never told the old clerk. Who would believe me? I finished my run to Salt Lake, delivered the load, and collected my pay. But I was a different man. The road didn't feel the same. The monotony was now filled with a low, constant hum of dread. I still drive the I-80. It's the most direct route. But I never take a load that schedules me to cross Wyoming in the winter. And if I'm ever caught in a snow flurry there, no matter how light, I pull over at the first truck stop and wait it out. I see them sometimes in my dreams. The man, the woman, the child. Their frozen faces, their empty eyes, but I don't scream anymore. I just look at them, and I give a slow, single nod. They are the keepers of this stretch of asphalt. A permanent memorial to a single moment of human failure. And now, when the blizzards roll in over Wyoming, and the whiteout conditions claim the road, some drivers on the CB still talk about the family on the shoulder. They warn the new guys about the statues, but I know the truth. They aren't statues, they're a question. A question asked of every soul brave or foolish enough to be on that road in a storm. And now, I have my own warning, one I sometimes whisper over the CB when the snow starts to fall and a nervous new voice asks about the story. I just say, it's not about whether you stop. It's about whether you're willing to see. Then I turn my radio off and drive, alone with the ghosts and the endless, white line,